The morning sun filtered through the kitchen blinds, casting striped shadows across the granite countertop where Wyatt Morgan stood preparing his coffee. Steam rose from the dark liquid as he added a splash of cream, his wedding ring catching the light as he stirred. The house held that particular kind of silence that came with early mornings, a silence that used to feel comfortable, but lately seemed to hold an edge of something else. He glanced at the clock, 7:15 a.m. In the 10 years of their marriage, he'd learned to read the rhythm of their mornings like a well-worn book. Lana would be up soon, rushing through her morning routine with that nervous energy that had become her constant companion these past few months. Right on cue, he heard the soft pad of feet upstairs, followed by the familiar creak of their bedroom door. But the routine had shifted lately, subtle changes that nagged at him like a splinter under his skin. The shower ran longer than it used to. Her morning routine had expanded to include extra time for makeup, for choosing outfits with a care she hadn't shown in years. Wyatt took his coffee to the breakfast nook, opening his laptop to check his emails. The architecture firm where he worked as a senior partner had a major project presentation next week, but his mind kept wandering from the blueprints on his screen to the changes in his home life. The sound of heels clicking against hardwood announced Lana's descent. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, perfectly put together in a navy pencil skirt and cream blouse. Her dark hair fell in careful waves past her shoulders, styled he noticed the way she used to do for their date nights, before they'd stopped having those. "Morning," he offered, watching as she moved straight to the coffee maker, her phone already in hand. "Oh, morning," she replied, distracted by whatever was on her screen. Her fingers moved rapidly across the surface, typing out a message. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth, the kind of smile he rarely saw directed at him anymore. "Want some breakfast?" "I could make eggs," Wyatt suggested, remembering weekend mornings when they'd cook together, planning their day over fresh coffee and shared sections of the newspaper. "No time." Lana grabbed a travel mug from the cabinet, filling it quickly. "Big presentation today. The Johnson account needs final revisions before the client meeting." Wyatt nodded, noting how she still hadn't made eye contact. "Another late night, then?" "Probably." She dropped a tea bag in her travel mug, something else that had changed. She'd switched from coffee to green tea 3 weeks ago, claiming it was better for her skin. "Don't wait up for dinner. I'll grab something at the office." "I could bring you lunch," he suggested, testing the waters. "That new Thai place open near your office." Finally, she looked at him, but her eyes skated away too quickly. "Oh, that's sweet, but I got a working lunch with the team. Maybe another time?" Before he could respond, her phone buzzed. The smile that crossed her face was immediate, unconscious, and felt like a punch to his gut. She turned slightly, angling the screen away from his view as she typed a response. "I should go. Don't want to hit traffic." Lana grabbed her purse from the counter, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. She reapplied her lipstick, MAC Ruby Woo. He remembered buying it for her last Christmas, and fluffed her hair. "Have a good day." The door closed behind her with a soft click that seemed to echo in the sudden emptiness of the house. Wyatt sat there, his coffee growing cold, and tried to pinpoint exactly when things had started to change. It hadn't been sudden, like erosion wearing away at a coastline. The shift had been gradual enough that he'd almost missed it. Almost. But there were moments, crystal clear in hindsight, that should have warned him. The password on her phone changing for the first time in years. The new clothes appearing in her closet, tags removed before he could see the prices. Private calls taken in another room, her voice too low to make out the words. Each detail on its own might mean nothing, but together they formed a pattern he couldn't ignore. At work that day, Wyatt found himself distracted. The blueprints for the Harrison project blurred before his eyes as his mind replayed morning after morning of similar scenes. Earth to Wyatt, Marcus, his friend and fellow architect, waved a hand in front of his face. "You okay, man? You've been staring at that same section for 20 minutes. Wyatt blinked, forcing himself to focus. "Yeah, just thinking about the support beam placement." Marcus leaned against his desk, lowering his voice. "Sure it's not about something else? You've been quiet lately." "It's nothing." Wyatt straightened the papers on his desk, a habit when he needed to organize his thoughts. "Just some stuff at home I need to figure out." "Trouble in paradise?" Marcus asked, then held up his hands at Wyatt's sharp look. "None of my business. Just remember I'm here if you need to talk." Wyatt nodded, grateful for the offer, but knowing he wasn't ready to voice his suspicions. Speaking them aloud would make them real, and he needed more information first. The day dragged on, each hour marked by the temptation to drive by Lana's office to verify her working lunch story. He resisted, throwing himself into work instead. By 6 o'clock, he'd made more progress on the Harrison project than he had all week, fueled by a need to keep his mind occupied. Driving home, he decided to make dinner anyway. They used to enjoy cooking together, and even if she came home late, he could at least try to maintain some normalcy. He stopped at the grocery store, selecting ingredients for her favorite chicken marsala. The house felt different when he walked in, emptier somehow, despite the fact that Lana was rarely home this early anyway. He moved through the kitchen with practiced ease, the routine of cooking offering a temporary distraction from his thoughts. The chicken was just coming out of the oven when he heard her key in the lock, earlier than expected. His heart rate picked up as he listened to her heels on the hardwood, noting how she paused, probably checking her appearance in the hallway mirror again. "Something smells amazing," Lana said as she entered the kitchen. Her cheeks were flushed, hair slightly disheveled in a way that might be from the wind, might be from something else. She set her purse down, and Wyatt noticed how she angled her body to keep it close. "Thought we could eat together for a change." He kept his voice casual as he plated the food. "How was the presentation?" "Oh, it went well." She swept her hair back from her face, a nervous gesture he recognized. "The client loved our initial concepts. We're moving forward with the full proposal." Wyatt nodded, setting their plates on the dining room table. He'd opened a bottle of red wine earlier, letting it breathe. Lana took her seat, immediately reaching for her phone. "Work can wait," he suggested, pouring her wine. "When's the last time we had dinner together?" Guilt flickered across her face as she set the phone aside. "You're right. This looks wonderful, honey." They ate in what felt like practiced silence, broken only by the scrape of cutlery against plates. Wyatt watched her over the rim of his wine glass, noting how she kept glancing at her phone, how her leg bounced slightly under the table. Another nervous tell. "How's the Johnson account really going?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Must be intense if you're having so many late nights." Lana looked up, seeming distracted. "Oh, yes. The client is very particular about their requirements." Grant, she paused just for a moment, but Wyatt caught it. "The team is working overtime to meet their expectations." As if on cue, her phone lit up, screen facing upward after she'd shifted in her chair. Wyatt caught the flash of a message notification, and in that split second, his world tilted on its axis. The words burned into his retinas. "Can't wait to put my dick inside you again." Time seemed to freeze. The fork in Wyatt's hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Blood rushed in his ears as the words repeated themselves in his mind, each repetition bringing a new wave of nausea. Lana's hand darted out to grab the phone, but her reaction, the slight tremor in her fingers, the way her face drained of color, only confirmed what he'd seen. "Everything okay?" he managed to ask, amazed at how steady his voice sounded when everything inside him was screaming. "Just work stuff," Lana mumbled, shoving the phone into her pocket. "You know how it is with deadlines and client demands." Wyatt forced himself to take another bite of chicken that now tasted like ash in his mouth. His mind raced through the past few months, each memory taking on new meaning. The late nights, the emotional distance, the constant phone checking. The pieces of the puzzle snapped into place with devastating clarity. "I should review some files for tomorrow," Lana said, standing abruptly. Her plate was still half full, the food barely touched. "Thanks for dinner, it was delicious." Wyatt watched her retreat to their home office, his appetite completely gone. The urge to follow her, to demand answers, to unleash the storm of emotions building inside him was almost overwhelming. But something held him back. A cold, calculating voice in his head urged patience. He needed to know everything before he acted. That night, lying in bed beside his wife, Wyatt stared at the ceiling fan as it spun lazy circles above them. Lana lay with her back to him, her breathing even but not quite deep enough for real sleep. The space between them felt infinite, though they were separated by only inches. He thought about the woman he'd married 10 years ago. The way she'd looked at him across the altar, her eyes bright with tears of joy. The life they'd built together, the plans they'd made. All of it now tainted by whatever was happening with this Grant person. The next morning, Wyatt began his investigation in earnest. He left for work early, parking near Lana's office building. He watched as she arrived, noting how she checked her appearance one last time before entering. 20 minutes later, a man he didn't recognize held the door for her, following close behind. Their body language spoke volumes. Too familiar, too comfortable. Over the next few days, Wyatt pieced together more of the puzzle. He noticed how Lana always took her phone to the bathroom, never left it unattended. But she grew careless in her confidence, leaving small openings in her security. During one such moment, while she showered, Wyatt managed to access her phone. His hand shook slightly as he opened her email, grateful she hadn't thought to change that password. The evidence was there in conversations between Lana and Grant Thompson, emails filled with innuendos and references to meetings that never appeared on her work calendar. A quick LinkedIn search revealed Grant's profile. Early 30s, carefully styled dark hair, the kind of professional headshot that belonged in a magazine. His profile listed him as a senior account manager at Lana's firm, with recommendations praising his charismatic leadership and ability to connect with clients. Each new detail felt like another knife in Wyatt's back, but he maintained his composure. At dinner, he'd ask about her day, listening as she wove stories about client meetings and project deadlines. He watched how she'd check her phone under the table, thinking he couldn't see her slight smile at whatever message appeared. The real confirmation came unexpectedly. Wyatt had stopped for coffee near Lana's office, legitimately in the area for a client meeting, when he overheard two women at the next table. "Did you see them at the holiday party?" The first woman whispered, not quite quietly enough. The way Grant was following Lana around like a puppy. "He's always been a player," her companion replied with a knowing tone. "Remember Jessica from accounting? Same story, different year. Though I have to say he usually goes for the single ones." Wyatt's hand tightened around his coffee cup, the cardboard creasing under his grip. He forced himself to remain seated, to keep his breathing even as the women continued their gossip. "Well, you know what they say about the quiet ones," the first woman continued. "She always seems so straight-laced, but I guess Grant has a way of bringing out people's wild side. Did you see them at Murphy's last week? I was there with Tom from IT, and they were in the back booth, definitely not discussing the Johnson account, if you know what I mean." The women laughed, the sound grating against Wyatt's nerves like sandpaper. He stood abruptly, leaving his half-finished coffee on the table. The cool air outside helped clear his head, but the women's words kept repeating in his mind. That evening, watching Lana prepare for another late meeting, Wyatt felt something fundamental shift inside him. The initial shock and pain had crystallized into something harder, colder. He observed her with new eyes as she applied fresh lipstick in the hallway mirror, smoothed her skirt with practiced hands. "Don't wait up," she called over his shoulder, the words so familiar they'd lost all meaning. "Lots to review for the Johnson account." "Of course," Wyatt replied, his voice carefully neutral. "Good luck with the review." The door closed behind her, and Wyatt walked to the window, watching as she pulled out of the driveway. He waited until her car disappeared around the corner before reaching for his keys. Tonight, he decided, he would see exactly what kind of review she was conducting. Following her proved surprisingly easy. She drove to a small Italian restaurant on the other side of town, far from both their home and her office. Through the window, Wyatt watched as she greeted Grant with a kiss that left no doubt about their relationship. They sat close, heads bent together, sharing a bottle of wine and laughing at private jokes. Wyatt sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He memorized Grant's face, noted the way he touched Lana's hand across the table, observed how comfortable they seemed together. This wasn't a first date or a casual fling. This was an established affair. The next week passed in a blur of surveillance and discovery. Wyatt learned their patterns, the days they met, the excuses Lana used. He watched as she transformed from his wife into someone else entirely, laughing, flirting, alive in a way she hadn't been with him in years. Each night, lying beside her in their bed, Wyatt refined his plan. The fury inside him had cooled into something more dangerous, a calculated resolve that would ensure both Lana and Grant understood the consequences of their actions. He thought about confronting them immediately, about exposing their affair to everyone they knew, about simply walking away. But none of those options satisfied the deep sense of betrayal that had taken root in his heart. One evening, as Lana showered, Wyatt stared at her phone on the kitchen counter. She'd grown careless lately, confident in her ability to maintain her double life. The message notification lit up the screen. Another text from Grant, discussing their next meeting. Wyatt picked up the phone, his decision made. He wouldn't confront her yet, wouldn't give her the chance to spin excuses or beg forgiveness. Instead, he would wait, gather more evidence, and when the time came, ensure that both Lana and her lover understood exactly what they'd destroyed. The shower water continued to run upstairs as Wyatt memorized Grant's number, his mind already forming a plan. He replaced the phone exactly as he'd found it, moving to the living room window. Outside, the street was quiet, peaceful, completely at odds with the storm building inside him. In their bedroom that night, Wyatt listened to Lana's breathing even out as she fell asleep. He thought about the years they'd shared, the trust they'd built, the future they'd planned. All of it meaningless now, shattered by her betrayal. As he stared at the ceiling, his resolve hardened. He would make them pay, not with violence or loud confrontations, but with the cold, calculated precision that would leave them both understanding exactly what they'd lost. Tomorrow, he decided he would begin the next phase of his plan. Let them think they were clever. Let them believe their secret was safe. Soon enough, they would learn the true cost of their actions. The study in Wyatt's home office held the accumulated evidence of Lana's betrayal. Photographs taken outside restaurants and hotels, screenshots of messages he'd managed to capture, notes detailing times and locations. Spread across his desk, they told a story of deception that had become impossible to ignore. Grant's phone number stared up at him from a post-it note, each digit representing another crack in his marriage. He picked up Lana's phone, left carelessly on the kitchen counter again. She'd grown so confident in her deception that she'd become sloppy. The familiar twist of pain in his chest had hardened into something colder, more purposeful. Running his thumb across the screen, he opened her messages with Grant, studying their patterns of communication. "Time to end this game," he muttered, beginning to type. "Need to see you tonight. Wyatt's working late on the Harrison project. Come to the house at. Don't want to wait for our usual spot." The response came almost immediately, making his jaw clench. "Dangerous. Your place? What's gotten into you?" Wyatt forced himself to channel Lana's writing style as he replied, "Miss you too much. Door will be unlocked. Let yourself in. Want you in my bed for once. Fuck, babe. You're being naughty. I like this side of you. See you at 8. Can't wait to feel your hands on me." Each message felt like swallowing glass, but Wyatt maintained his composure as he deleted the exchange. He replaced the phone exactly where he'd found it, checking the time. 2 p.m. 6 hours until Grant would walk into his trap. In his office, he made a call to Marcus at work. "Need you to do me a favor." "What's up?" Marcus asked, the sound of blueprints rustling in the background. "If anyone asks, I'm working late on the Harrison project tonight." A pause. "Wyatt, man, what's going on? You've been off lately. Just need an alibi. For a few hours." Wyatt replied, his voice steady. "Can you handle that?" "Yeah, of course." Another pause. "But if you need to talk, I don't." Wyatt's tone left no room for discussion. "Just confirm I'm at the office if anyone asks." After hanging up, he spent the next few hours preparing. He moved furniture subtly, ensuring clear paths through the room. Checked the security cameras he'd installed last week, making sure they covered every angle. This wasn't just about confrontation, it was about having evidence if needed. At 6, Lana came home from work. She moved through the kitchen with nervous energy, checking her phone every few minutes. Wyatt watched her from the doorway, noting how she'd touched up her makeup before leaving the office. "I might go to the gym later," she said, not quite meeting his eyes as she poured a glass of water. "The Harrison project needs attention," he replied evenly, watching her reaction. "I'll probably be at the office until late." "Don't wait up." Relief flickered across her face, poorly hidden. "Okay. Good luck with the project." Under the table, Her fingers flew across her phone screen. Wyatt could picture the message to Grant. Coast is clear. Still on for tonight. His hands clenched briefly before he forced them to relax. Leftover chicken in the fridge if you want it, he said, maintaining the facade of normalcy. Thanks, honey. She glanced up, guilt flashing across her features before being replaced by a practiced smile. Don't work too hard. At 7, he made a show of gathering his work materials, briefcase stuffed with blank papers. He kissed her cheek, noting how she tensed slightly at the contact. Don't work too hard at the gym. I won't, she promised, already reaching for her phone as he walked away. Instead of driving to the office, Wyatt parked his car a block away, hidden behind the Thompsons' large hedge. At 7:45, he watched Lana's car pull out of the driveway. She wasn't heading to the gym. He'd followed her enough times to know she'd be driving to the small wine bar 3 blocks from Grant's apartment, their usual meeting spot before moving to his place. By 7:55, Wyatt was back inside his house, positioned in the darkened living room. The security camera's small red lights blinked steadily, recording everything. He'd considered many scenarios for this confrontation over the past weeks. Violence held appeal, the primal satisfaction of making Grant hurt the way he hurt. But that was too simple, too quick. This needed to be about consequences, about understanding exactly what they destroyed. At exactly 8, the front door opened quietly. Footsteps in the hallway, confident and unhurried. The sound of expensive shoes on hardwood, Italian leather probably. Grant had expensive taste, based on Wyatt's surveillance. The footsteps paused briefly by the stairs, then continued toward the living room. Wyatt reached over and switched on the lamp. Grant froze in the doorway, one hand still raised toward his tie. He was younger in person, maybe early 30s, with the kind of looks that came from regular gym visits and expensive grooming routines. His confidence wavered as he registered Wyatt's presence, reality crashing into whatever fantasy he'd been entertaining. You must be Grant. Wyatt's voice was dangerously calm. Please come in. We should talk about your relationship with my wife. There's been a misunderstanding, Grant started, taking a step back toward the hallway. His eyes darted between Wyatt and the door, calculating distances. Wyatt stood slowly, his height advantage becoming apparent. At 6'2", he towered over Grant's more compact frame. No misunderstanding. Sit down. Look, man. Sit down. Each word carried the weight of barely contained violence. Grant sank into the armchair, his cockiness evaporating. Listen, I don't want any trouble. This is clearly a sensitive situation. Sensitive? Wyatt laughed, but there was no humor in it. Trouble was walking into my home, thinking you'd fuck my wife in my bed. Trouble was sending her messages about your dick while she sat across from me at dinner. What's happening now? This isn't trouble, Grant. This is consequences. She said you were having problems. Grant tried, his eyes continuing to dart toward the door. Said you were distant, that the marriage was basically over. And you believe that? Wyatt moved closer, towering over him. Or did you just not care? How many married women have you pursued, Grant? The office gossip suggests I'm not the first husband you've disrespected. Grant's face paled. Who told you? Jessica, from accounting? Or maybe others? Wyatt's smile was sharp. Word gets around, doesn't it? The charming account manager who preys on vulnerable women. Tell me, do you have a system? Or do you just throw out lines until someone bites? This is crazy. Grant stood abruptly, fear finally overtaking his practiced charm. I'm leaving. Wyatt's hand shot out, gripping Grant's shoulder with bruising force. Not yet. First, you're going to listen to exactly what kind of man you are. Get your hands off me. Grant tried to shake free, but Wyatt's grip only tightened. I said, listen. Wyatt shoved him back into the chair. You walked into my house, into my life, thinking there would be no consequences. That stops now. Grant's attempt to stand again was met with a swift punch that sent him sprawling across the coffee table. Blood trickled from his split lip as he stared up at Wyatt, fear replacing his earlier bravado. I've done my research, Wyatt continued, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. 3 affairs with married women in the last 2 years. HR complaints that mysteriously disappeared. You're not just a homewrecker, Grant. You're a predator. You don't know anything, Grant spat, trying to regain some dignity, as he pushed himself up. I know everything. Wyatt pulled out his phone, showing screenshots of emails, text messages, photos. Every meeting, every hotel, every lie. I could destroy you professionally. One email to HR about you fucking your married coworker. How many companies want a liability like that? What do you want? Grant's voice shook slightly as blood continued to drip from his lip. I want you to understand exactly what you're part of. You're not her savior or her escape. You're just a convenient dick who doesn't care about destroying families. Wyatt crouched down to Grant's level. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to disappear from her life. No goodbyes, no explanations. Block her number, avoid her at work, and if she tries to contact you, remember this moment. You're insane, Grant spat, wiping blood from his lip. Wyatt's fist connected with Grant's jaw, sending him back to the floor. I'm perfectly sane. I'm just done playing nice. He hauled Grant up by his collar, the expensive fabric tearing slightly. Do we understand each other? Grant nodded frantically, blood staining his shirt. Yeah, I understand. It's over. I'll stay away. Good. Wyatt released him, watching as he stumbled toward the door. And Grant, if I ever see you near my wife again, this conversation gets much less civilized. Grant fled, the door slamming behind him. Through the window, Wyatt watched him sprint to his car, fumbling with his keys before peeling away from the curb. In the sudden silence, Wyatt surveyed the room. A few drops of blood on the hardwood would need cleaning. The coffee table was slightly askew. He straightened everything methodically, erasing the physical evidence of the confrontation while the security cameras continued their silent recording. His phone buzzed, a text from Grant. I won't say anything about tonight. Just stay away from me. Wyatt allowed himself a cold smile as he deleted the message. Phase 1 complete. Now for the harder conversation. At 9:15, headlights swept across the windows. Wyatt sat in his armchair, a glass of whiskey in hand, watching as Lana's key turned in the lock. She burst through the door, stopping short at the sight of him. Wyatt! Her voice pitched high with surprise. I thought, the Harrison Project. Sit down, Lana. His voice was quiet, but carried an edge that made her comply immediately. We need to talk about Grant. The color drained from her face. What are you? Don't. Wyatt's hand tightened around his glass. Don't insult me by lying. Not anymore. Wyatt, please, I can explain everything. Explain what? The late nights? The gym sessions that somehow left your hair perfectly styled? Or maybe, he pulled out his phone, the text messages about his dick while we ate dinner together. Tears welled in her eyes. It wasn't I never meant to get caught. Wyatt finished for her. That's the only thing you're sorry about, isn't it? That your perfect little affair got exposed. No, it's not like that. Lana stood, reaching for him. I love you, Wyatt. It was a mistake. He jerked away from her touch as if burned. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. Fucking your coworker for months? That's a choice, Lana. A series of choices you made every time you lied to my face. Please, she sobbed, mascara running down her cheeks. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. There's nothing to fix. Wyatt stood, towering over her. Your lover just left here with a bloody lip and a new understanding of consequences. He won't be waiting for you anymore. Lana's eyes widened. What did you do? What needed to be done? He walked to the stairs, pausing at the bottom. Pack your things. I want you out of my house tonight. Wyatt, please. Where am I supposed to go? He turned back, his eyes cold. That's not my problem anymore. You chose this, Lana. Now you get to live with it. I'll tell everyone what you did to Grant, she threatened, desperation making her voice sharp. I'll go to the police. Wyatt laughed, the sound devoid of warmth. Go ahead. Tell them how your married lover came to my house to fuck my wife. I'm sure that will go over well at work. I have everything recorded, Lana. Everything. She crumpled onto the couch, sobs racking her body. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. No, you're not, he said quietly. You're sorry you got caught. Sorry your comfortable life is falling apart. But you're not sorry for what you did. Pack your bags, Lana. When I come back down, I want you gone. In their bedroom, Wyatt listened to her moving around downstairs, her crying punctuated by the sound of drawers opening and closing, hangers scraping across rods. His phone buzzed, a text from Marcus asking if everything was okay. He ignored it, focusing on the task at hand. When he heard the front door close an hour later, he descended the stairs. The house felt different, emptier but somehow cleaner, like lancing a wound. The pain was sharp but necessary for healing. On the coffee table, Lana had left her key and a note. He picked up the key and dropped it in his pocket without reading her words. Whatever explanation or justification she'd written wouldn't change anything. His phone buzzed again. Lana, this time, please don't do this. We could talk about this. I'll do anything. Then another. I love you. Graham meant nothing. Please just talk to me. And another. Where am I supposed to go? All my life is here. He blocked her number without responding, then poured another whiskey. In the silence of his house, Wyatt felt the first stirrings of something like peace. Not happiness, not yet, but the satisfaction of having dealt with a threat decisively. Tomorrow, he would call his lawyer. Tonight, he would sit with his whiskey and the knowledge that he'd handed out the consequences they'd earned. Let them both understand exactly what they'd thrown away. Looking around the living room, at the space that had witnessed their confrontation, Wyatt felt a strange sense of completion. The security cameras continued their silent vigil, recording the empty room where his marriage had finally ended. But unlike the marriage, this ending had been on his terms. His phone buzzed one final time, a text from an unknown number. Grant again, using a different phone. You've made your point. I'm done with all of this. She's your problem now. Wyatt smiled grimly as he blocked this number too. No, he thought. She's her own problem now. The morning after the confrontation dawned cold and gray, matching Wyatt's mood as he sat at his kitchen counter. Steam rose from his untouched coffee while he stared at a business card. Richard Palmer, divorce attorney. He'd kept it in his wallet for weeks, waiting for this moment. His phone showed a cascade of notifications. 15 missed calls from Lana's now-blocked number, 3 from unknown numbers, and a string of increasingly desperate text messages. He picked up his phone, scanning the messages without emotion. Please talk to me. I can explain everything. Where am I supposed to go? You can't just throw away 10 years. A new message popped up from an unknown number. My fiancé left me because of you. Thanks for ruining my life. Grant. Wyatt smiled coldly as he composed a response. You ruined your own life. Be grateful that's all you lost. Then he blocked that number too. The doorbell rang at 9:47 a.m. Wyatt checked the security camera feed on his phone, watching Lana pace on the porch. She looked terrible, makeup streaked from crying, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her usually perfect hair a disheveled mess. Wyatt? Her voice carried through the door. Please, I know you're in there. We need to talk about this like adults. He remained silent, watching through the camera as she pressed her forehead against the door. I have nowhere else to go, she continued, voice cracking. Grant won't answer my calls. My credit cards aren't working. I try to get a hotel room, but because they're joint accounts, Wyatt called through the door, his voice steady. Already frozen. Lawyer's recommendation. You can't do this to me. Anger crept into her voice. I helped build this life too. Everything we have. Everything we had. He corrected, still not opening the door. At least let me in so we can talk properly. She banged on the door now. This is still my house too. Wyatt opened the door so suddenly that she stumbled back. Actually, it's not. My name's on the deed. Bought it before we married. But you didn't read the prenup that carefully, did you? Lana looked even worse up close. Mascara smeared under red-rimmed eyes, her expensive suit wrinkled from sleeping in her car. The designer purse she carried probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, but it wouldn't help her now. Can I just come in? Her voice softened, taking on the pleading tone she'd always used when she wanted something. Please? 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. No. He blocked the doorway with his body. But I'll give you 5 minutes right here. Consider it more generous than you deserve. I made a horrible mistake, she started, wringing her hands. Grant, you didn't mean anything. It was stupid and selfish, and I know that now. But 10 years of marriage. 10 years of what? Wyatt's voice remained calm, which seemed to unsettle her more than anger would have. 10 years of me working to build a life while you built a relationship with your coworker? It wasn't like that. Things between us had gotten distant. Grant was just... He made me feel... Don't... The word cut through her excuses like a knife. I don't care why you did it. I don't care what he made you feel. I care that you did it. That you looked me in the eye every day and lied. We can fix this. Desperation made her voice sharp. People overcome affairs all the time. With counseling, with work. Want to know what I find interesting? Wyatt leaned against the doorframe, studying her. You're more upset about losing your comfortable life than about losing me. That's not true. Tears spilled down her cheeks again. I love you. No, you don't. His voice stayed steady. You loved what I provided. The house, the lifestyle, the stability. Tell me something, Lana. How long would it have gone on if I hadn't caught you? She flinched. It wasn't 6 months, he answered for her. I have every receipt, every hotel bill, every restaurant charge. Did you think I wouldn't notice the joint account being drained for your little rendezvous? You were watching me? Color rose in her cheeks. How dare you spy on me? That's how dare I. Wyatt laughed, the sound harsh. You're standing on my porch, begging to come back into my house, after I caught you arranging to fuck your lover in my bed. And you're angry about invasion of privacy? People make mistakes. She stepped closer, trying to catch his eye. Haven't you ever made a mistake? A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. His eyes met hers, cold and unforgiving. Fucking your coworker for 6 months? That's a choice. Multiple choices, made every single time you met him. What about counseling? She tried a different approach, her voice softening. We could work through this. Learn to trust again. Build something stronger. There is no we anymore, Lana. He pulled an envelope from his back pocket. These are divorce papers. My lawyer will contact yours. I don't have a lawyer. Fresh tears fell. I don't have anything. You've frozen all our accounts. Joint accounts, he corrected again. Your personal account is still active. Oh wait, that's right. You spent most of that on hotels and lingerie for Grant, didn't you? Her hand flew up to slap him. Wyatt caught her wrist easily, his grip firm but not painful. Don't. He held her wrist until she lowered her hand. You lost the right to touch me the moment you let him touch you. What am I supposed to do? She whispered, shoulders slumping. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. He released her wrist. You're a college-educated professional, Lana. Figure it out. My parents already know. His smile held no warmth. I called them last night. Told them everything. Your mother cried. Your father asked if the prenup was still valid. He seemed relieved when I said yes. Fresh horror dawned on her face. You didn't. I did. Just like I sent emails to HR documenting Grant's pattern of pursuing married coworkers. And to his fiancée. Oh, did you not know about her? In Boston. Lana staggered back. He's engaged? 3 years. Long-distance relationship. She was very interested in the photos I sent, especially the ones from the Rivera Hotel. That little weekend getaway last month? When you told me you were at a marketing conference? You've ruined everything. Her voice rose to a shriek. No, you did that. Wyatt held out the envelope again. Take the papers. Read them. Sign them. The faster you do, the faster this ends. She snatched the envelope. I could fight this. Get my own lawyer. With what money? He leaned against the doorframe. The prenup is clear about infidelity. You get what you brought in, minus joint assets acquired during marriage. Considering your shopping habits, that's not much. I helped you build your career. Anger made her voice rise. All those client dinners, networking events, and while I was building our future, you were destroying our present. He checked his watch. 5 minutes are up. Go find a lawyer, Lana. Next time we talk, it'll be through them. Wait. She grabbed the door as he started to close it. What about my things? My clothes? Your clothes are in garbage bags in the garage, along with all the lingerie receipts I found. Interesting how your taste in underwear improved when you had someone else to show it. 2. You're being cruel, she whispered. No, I'm being honest. Something you might want to try. He gently but firmly removed her hand from the door. The garage will be open until noon. After that, anything left goes to Goodwill. I have nothing, she said, tears starting again. You have exactly what you chose. He closed the door, engaging the lock with a decisive click. Through the security feed, he watched her stand there for long minutes, staring at the envelope in her hands. Finally, she walked to her car, a leased luxury vehicle he'd already arranged to have repossessed tomorrow. Another text buzzed through from Grant. "My entire life is falling apart because of you," Wyatt typed back. "Should have thought about that before you fell into my wife." Then he blocked that number too. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings and paperwork. Lana tried twice more to see him, once showing up at his office. The scene she caused would fuel office gossip for months. "You can't just throw me away," she'd screamed as security let her out. 10 years. Don't I deserve a second chance? His co-workers avoided eye contact, but he heard the whispers. Let them talk. He had nothing to be ashamed of. Her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in designer suits that probably cost more than Lana could afford now, tried to argue against the prenup. The meeting in his lawyer's office turned heated quickly. "My client contributed significantly to the marriage," she argued across the conference table. "The house value has doubled, the investment portfolio. Your client violated the fidelity clause," Wyatt's lawyer countered, sliding across copies of hotel receipts and photos. Section 3, Paragraph 2 is quite clear about the consequences. Those photos were obtained without consent. In public places, Wyatt cut in. No expectation of privacy in a hotel lobby or restaurant. And the credit card statements are all admissible. The negotiation lasted exactly 20 minutes. In the end, Lana got her personal belongings, her car loan transferred to her name, and a small settlement that would barely cover 3 months' rent in a decent apartment. A month after she'd signed the papers, news filtered through the office grapevine. Grant had left the company, moving back to Boston to try salvaging things with his fiancée. It hadn't worked. Last update said he was working at a smaller firm, his career trajectory significantly altered. Lana had also changed jobs, taking a lower-paying position at a smaller company across town. She tried reaching out through mutual friends, sending messages about regret and growth and learning from mistakes. Wyatt blocked each new number, deleted each message unread. "She seems really sorry," his sister Sarah said over coffee one morning. "Maybe don't." Wyatt's tone ended that conversation before it started. 6 weeks after the divorce was final, Lana made one last attempt. He found her sitting on his porch steps one evening, looking thinner and older than he remembered. "Just hear me out," she pleaded as he approached. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Already gave you those." He moved a step around her. "I lost everything," she said quietly. "My job, my friends, my home. Grant, he never cared about me at all? Did he? Just moved on to the next willing woman. You didn't lose anything." Wyatt turned to face her. "You threw it away. There's a difference. Can't we at least talk?" She stood, wiping her eyes. "All these years together mean nothing." He unlocked his door. "The woman I married never existed. She was just a role you played until something more exciting came along." "That's not true." She grabbed his arm. "I loved you. Then you have a funny way of showing it." He removed her hand. "Go home, Lana. Whatever's left of it. I have an apartment share with 2 roommates," she said bitterly. "My portion of rent is more than I can afford on my new salary." "Is that what you wanted to hear?" "I don't want to hear anything from you." He stepped inside. "That's the point you keep missing. You've punished me enough." Her voice rose. "I get it, okay? I screwed up. I lost everything. Isn't that enough?" Wyatt paused in the doorway. "It's not about punishment, Lana. It's about consequences. You made choices. Adult choices. Now you're living with adult consequences. So that's it? 10 years mean nothing. They meant everything." He met her eyes one last time. "That's why there's no coming back from this. Goodbye, Lana." The door closed with finality. Through the window, he watched her stand there, shoulders shaking with sobs, before finally walking away into the gathering darkness. Inside, Wyatt poured himself a whiskey and sat in his favorite chair. The house felt different now, no longer a monument to betrayal, but not quite a home either. Not yet, but it would be in time. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Drinks tonight? You've been hibernating too. Long." Wyatt considered the invitation. Maybe it was time to step back into the world. Not to date. He wasn't ready for that. Might not be for a long time. But a drink with a friend? That could be a start. Give me 30 minutes, he texted back. Setting down his glass, Wyatt looked around the room where his marriage had ended. The security cameras were gone now, their memory cards stored safely with his lawyer. The furniture had been rearranged, erasing the last traces of that night's confrontation. He'd lost something too, he realized. Not just a wife or a marriage, but a certain faith in people. A capacity for trust that might never fully return. But he gained something as well, a clearer understanding of his own strength, his unwillingness to accept betrayal, his ability to stand firm when everything crumbled. Before leaving, he took one last look at his phone. There was a new message from an unknown number, Lana's latest attempt to reach him. Without reading it, he deleted the message and blocked the number. The action felt less like anger now and more like closing a book. The story was over. Time to start a new one. Grabbing his keys, Wyatt headed out to meet Marcus. Behind him, the house stood quiet and empty, its room slowly transforming from a space of shared memories to something new, a foundation for whatever came next. He didn't know what that would be yet, but he knew one thing for certain. He would never let anyone make him question his worth again. The afternoon sun beat down on Callum Mercer's broad shoulders as he pushed his 5-year-old daughter Ivy on the swing set. His back ached from leaning under the hood of a Chevy truck for most of the day, and his muscles protested with each push. The neighborhood park sat empty on this Tuesday afternoon, just the way he liked it. No other parents to make small talk with, no other kids for Ivy to compete with for the swings. Just the two of them under the Texas sky, the air still heavy with summer heat despite it being late September. After a 10-hour shift at Mike's auto shop, his hands were still stained with grease despite the thorough scrubbing he'd given them. The black lines etched into his calloused palms had become a permanent feature over his 15 years as a mechanic. He'd changed into a clean gray t-shirt before picking up Ivy from kindergarten, but the smell of motor oil still clung to him, mixing with the scent of cut grass from the park. "Higher, Daddy," Ivy squealed, her blonde pigtails bouncing with each push. Her small hands gripped the chains so tight her knuckles whitened, but her face showed nothing but pure joy. Callum smiled, his weathered face softening at the sound of her laughter. The lines around his eyes, usually furrowed in concentration as he worked, relaxed as he watched his daughter soar through the air. This right here was why he worked so hard. For these moments. For her future. For the college fund that grew a little each month. For the stability he'd never had as a kid. "Hold on tight, kiddo," he warned, giving her another gentle push. His rough palms connected with her back, careful not to push too hard. He glanced at his watch. 4:30 p.m. He had promised to have dinner ready by 6 o'clock when Marin got home from her shift at the local diner. 10 more minutes, then we head home, okay? Ivy didn't respond. The swing slowed as her small legs stopped pumping. The happy energy that had surrounded her moments ago evaporated like morning dew under the Texas sun. "Ivy," Callum moved around to face her, concern creasing his brow. "You okay, sweetheart?" Her small face had crumpled, eyes downcast as she dragged her feet in the wood chips to stop the swing completely. Her bottom lip trembled, and Callum felt that instinctive fatherly panic rise in his chest, the one that appeared whenever his daughter showed signs of distress. "Daddy, are you going to leave me too?" Her voice was so small he almost didn't hear it over the distant hum of traffic beyond the park. Callum's brow furrowed. He knelt down in front of the swing, his knees popping from years of crouching beside engines. The wood chips dug into his jeans as he placed his hands gently on her knees. Her question had come from nowhere, like a bolt of lightning from a clear sky. "Leave you? Why would I leave you?" Ivy wouldn't meet his eyes, fidgeting with the hem of her pink dress, the one with the strawberries that she insisted on wearing at least twice a week. "Mommy said we're getting a new daddy." The words hit Callum like a punch to the gut. For a moment, he couldn't breathe, couldn't think. A new daddy? What the hell was Marin telling their daughter? The world around him seemed to dim, the cheerful park fading as his mind struggled to process what he'd just heard. "Ivy," he kept his voice steady despite the alarm bells ringing in his head. Years of handling emergencies at the shop had taught him how to stay calm when everything inside him wanted to explode. What exactly did Mommy say about new daddy? She shrugged her tiny shoulders, her eyes still fixed on her light-up sneakers. She was talking on the phone. She said I might get a new daddy soon. Callum's jaw clenched so tight he could feel his teeth grind together. He'd noticed Maren being distant lately, always on her phone, staying out later than her shifts required. Her excuses about helping close up or inventory had seemed plausible enough for a man who trusted his wife. But this was something else entirely. "And you don't want a new daddy?" he asked, trying to keep the tension from his voice, struggling to make this sound like a normal conversation while his world tilted on its axis. Ivy's lower lip trembled more violently now, and tears welled in her blue eyes. Maren's eyes, he'd always thought, "I don't like him, Daddy. He's mean." Her voice dropped to a whisper, as if sharing a dangerous secret. "He tried to hurt me." Everything went cold. The warm Texas afternoon vanished, replaced by an icy dread that spread through Callum's veins. A dangerous stillness settled over him, the kind of quiet that comes before a storm tears through the plains. "What do you mean, sweetheart? Who tried to hurt you?" "The man who comes over when you're at work." Ivy's words tumbled out faster now, like she'd been holding them back for too long. "He's big and loud. He smells funny, like those bottles you don't let me touch." She meant alcohol. "One time I spilled my juice, and he grabbed my arm really hard." Tears filled her blue eyes, spilling over onto her cheeks. "It hurted, Daddy. He called me a stupid little." She didn't finish, but Callum could fill in the blank. His heart pounded against his ribs so hard he thought it might crack bone. Someone had put their hands on his daughter, in his house, while he was busting his ass at work. The rage that flooded him was unlike anything he'd ever experienced, white-hot and all-consuming. "Can I see, baby?" he asked gently, his voice a stark contrast to the violent thoughts racing through his mind. The effort it took to keep his tone even made sweat bead on his forehead. Ivy pulled up the sleeve of her dress, revealing her small upper arm. There, marring the soft skin, was a faint bruise yellowing now, but still clearly visible. 5 fingerprints, clear as day. A large hand had grabbed her, squeezed hard enough to leave marks. Callum studied it, memorizing the size, the shape, the placement. Evidence. His mechanic's eye, trained to notice details, to spot what was wrong, cataloged everything about the injury. "When did this happen, Ivy?" He kept his voice gentle, stroking her hair with a hand that wanted to form a fist. Getting angry now would only scare her, and that was the last thing she needed. "Last week," she said, pulling her sleeve back down as if hiding the evidence could erase what happened. "When you were working on that big truck, the Peterson job." He'd been at the shop until nearly midnight, 3 days straight last week, rebuilding the transmission on a work truck that the owner needed back ASAP. Maren had said she'd switch shifts with a co-worker to be home with Ivy. Another lie. The pieces started to fit together in Callum's mind, creating a picture he couldn't bear to look at but couldn't turn away from either. Maren's late nights, the sudden password on her phone, the way she avoided his touch in bed. And now, this a man in his house, with his daughter, leaving bruises on her perfect skin. Callum stood up, lifting Ivy from the swing and setting her on his hip. She immediately wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face against his shoulder. He could feel her tears dampening his shirt, and it broke something inside him even as it hardened his resolve. "Am I in trouble?" she whispered, her breath warm against his neck. "No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong," he assured her, stroking her hair, fighting to keep his arms gentle around her when everything in him wanted to hold her tight and never let go. "You did the right thing telling me." As they walked to his pickup truck, Callum's mind raced through possibilities, plans, consequences. The mechanic in him approached the problem methodically. Identify the issue, gather information, fix what's broken. But this wasn't an engine. This was his family, or what was left of it. He buckled Ivy into her booster seat, checking the straps twice like he always did. His hands moved automatically while his mind churned with questions. Who was this man? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, how dare anyone lay a hand on his daughter? He slid behind the wheel, and his knuckles turned white as he gripped the steering wheel. The urge to drive straight home and wait for this mystery man to show up was almost overwhelming. But that wouldn't solve anything. He needed to be smart about this. Needed to protect Ivy first. Daddy. Ivy's voice pulled him back from the edge of his rage. He met her eyes in the rearview mirror, those innocent blue eyes that trusted him completely. You won't let the mean man hurt me again, right? Callum held her gaze, making a promise he intended to keep with every fiber of his being. Never again, princess. I promise. As he drove home, the familiar streets of their small town passing by in a blur, plans already forming in his mind, he made a silent vow. Whoever had touched his daughter would pay. And Marin? She'd made the biggest mistake of her life. The truck's engine rumbled beneath them, a sound that had always brought Callum comfort. Today, it felt like a countdown, ticking away the hours until his world would change forever. The modest brick house on Maple Street looked just like it always did as Callum pulled into the driveway. 2-bedroom, 1 bath, with a small yard he kept neatly trimmed each Sunday without fail. The American flag hung by the door, and flower beds lined the walkway, mums just starting to bloom in rich autumn colors. Nothing fancy, but it was theirs, or so he'd thought. He killed the engine and sat for a moment, studying the home he'd worked so hard for. They'd bought it 5 years ago, just before Ivy was born. The mortgage payments were steep, but Callum had never missed one. He'd installed the ceiling fans himself, painted every room, fixed the leaky roof last spring. All to give his family a safe place to live. What a fucking joke. Can we have spaghetti for dinner? Ivy asked, already unbuckling her seatbelt with practiced fingers. Sure thing, kiddo, Callum replied, forcing a smile he didn't feel. He needed to act normal for her sake. Inside, a storm was brewing, but he wouldn't let her see it. Ivy ran inside ahead of him, her earlier fear seemingly forgotten as she headed straight for her toys in the living room corner. The resilience of children, how quickly they could bounce back. Callum stood in the doorway for a moment, taking in the living room with new eyes. The worn brown couch where he collapsed after long shifts. The small TV they'd saved up for last Christmas. The family photos on the wall, Marin with her arm around him, both of them smiling at Ivy's 4th birthday party. Her blonde hair catching the sun, his arm protective around her waist. The happy family. The lie they'd been living. The clock on the wall read 5:10 p.m. Marin wouldn't be home for almost an hour. Plenty of time to start dinner and to look for evidence. Ivy, why don't you watch some cartoons while I make dinner, he suggested, turning on her favorite show. The colorful characters immediately captured her attention, giving Callum the freedom to move through the house unquestioned. He went to their bedroom first, closing the door quietly behind him. The bed was made, Marin's doing. He never bothered when he was the last to leave in the morning. Her perfume lingered in the air, the same vanilla scent she'd worn since they'd met. Once, it had driven him crazy. Now it just turned his stomach. Callum checked Marin's nightstand first, sliding open the drawer. Nothing unusual, just her reading glasses, some hand cream, a paperback romance novel. Her side of the closet, clothes, shoes, nothing out of place. He ran his hands along the top shelf, behind the stacks of sweaters, seeking anything hidden. Nothing. He checked under the mattress, behind the dresser, in every place he could think someone might hide evidence of an affair. The jewelry box her mother had given her nothing but the earrings he'd bought her for their anniversary and her grandmother's pearls. The shoebox at the back of the closet, just old photos and birthday cards. Frustration mounted as he found nothing concrete. Was he wrong? Was Ivy confused? But those bruises couldn't be explained away. And the new daddy comment? A 5-year-old wouldn't make that up. The bathroom was his next stop. He rifled through the drawers, finding only the usual toiletries. It wasn't until he checked the bathroom trash that he found something. Buried beneath tissues was a receipt from the liquor store 3 days ago when Marin had claimed to be working late. 2 bottles of wine and a pack of cigarettes. Marin didn't smoke. Never had. Callum stared at the receipt, a muscle twitching in his jaw. More evidence. More lies. He pocketed the receipt and continued his search, moving into the kitchen to start dinner as promised. Water for the pasta. Ground beef from the fridge. Onions, garlic, the sauce Ivy liked. His hands moved automatically through the familiar motions while his mind processed what he knew. Someone was coming to his house when he was at work. This person had hurt Ivy. Maren was telling their daughter she might get a new daddy. Maren was lying about her schedule. Maren was buying cigarettes for someone. It wasn't much to go on, but it was enough to know his marriage was a sham. He chopped the onion with more force than necessary, the sharp knife coming down against the cutting board with precise, angry cuts. How long had this been going on? Had she ever loved him? Or was he just a paycheck, a father for her child, a fix-it man for the house? The questions burned in his mind as he stirred the sauce, the rich smell filling the kitchen while bitterness filled his heart. That'd be why the time he heard Maren's car pull into the driveway. Dinner was ready, and Ivy was setting the table with the plastic plates. She loved the ones with different zoo animals on them. Callum had decided not to confront Maren yet. He needed more information and a plan. Rushing in without thinking would only make things worse. The front door opened, and Maren's voice called out, "Something smells good." She walked into the kitchen, wearing the blue uniform from the diner, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. A smudge of what looked like ketchup stained the front pocket. She looked tired, but then she always did after shift points 7 years ago, when they'd met at his friend's barbecue. That smile had made his heart race. She'd been the prettiest girl there, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm when she talked. He'd fallen hard and fast, proposed within 6 months. Now, all he felt was disgust. "Just spaghetti," he answered, keeping his voice neutral as he filled Ivy's cup with apple juice. "How was work?" "Busy," she sighed, dropping her purse on the counter. She bent to kiss Ivy's head, then reached for Callum, aiming for his cheek. He turned away, pretending to check the garlic bread in the oven. "Dinner's ready. Better eat while it's hot." If Maren noticed his coldness, she didn't comment. She washed her hands at the sink, then sat down at the table, immediately reaching for her phone. "No phones at dinner," Ivy said seriously, parroting the rule Callum had established months ago. "Right, Dad, right," Callum agreed, his eyes fixed on Maren. "Family time is phone-free." Maren hesitated, then put her phone face down beside her plate. "Of course, sorry." Throughout dinner, Callum watched her. The way she kept glancing at the silent phone. The way she barely made eye contact with him, focusing instead on her plate or on Ivy. The way she asked Ivy surface-level questions about her day without really listening to the answers. "Did you have fun at school today?" she asked, twirling spaghetti around her fork without much enthusiasm. "We painted pictures of our families," Ivy said through a mouthful of pasta. "I made one of you and me and Daddy." "That's nice, honey," Maren replied, her eyes darting to her phone as it lit up with a notification. "Teacher said we have to bring something special for show and tell on Friday." Ivy continued, oblivious to her mother's distraction. Maren murmured, clearly not listening. Callum felt his anger building again. Even now, she couldn't be bothered to pay attention to their daughter. He took a sip of water, then decided to test the waters. "Ivy mentioned something interesting at the park today," he said casually as he twirled pasta onto his fork, watching Maren's face carefully. Maren glanced up, wariness flashing in her eyes for just a moment. "Oh," she said, "something about a man coming over when I'm at work." He kept his tone conversational, as if discussing the weather. His eyes never left her face, cataloging every micro-expression. The color drained from Maren's face, but she recovered quickly, reaching for her water glass with a hand that trembled slightly. "Oh, that must have been the plumber. We had that leak last week, remember?" Callum nodded slowly, pretending to accept this explanation. "Right, the leak. There had been no leak, no plumber." Another lie to add to the growing pile. Strange, though, she seemed scared of him. "Kids get scared of strangers," Maren shrugged, focusing intently on cutting a meatball in half. "It's normal, maybe." Callum took a sip of water, his eyes never leaving her face. "But bruises aren't normal, are they?" Maren's fork clattered against her plate, and Ivy looked up, startled by the sudden noise. "What bruises?" Maren asked, her voice unnaturally high. "Ivy, go brush your teeth and get your pajamas on," Callum said gently, dropping a kiss on top of her head. "I'll be in to read you a story in a minute." "But I'm not done," she protested, pointing to her half-full plate. You can finish tomorrow. It's getting late, Callum insisted, his tone brooking no argument. Once Ivy had left the room, grumbling about not being tired, Callum leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. She has bruises on her arm. Finger marks. She says your friend grabbed her when she spilled her juice. Marin's eyes darted to the hallway, then back to Callum. She's making it up. Kids fall all the time. Don't. Callum's voice hardened, the single word carrying the weight of his rage. Don't you dare call our daughter a liar. I'm not saying she's lying, exactly, Marin backpedaled, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear nervously. Just that kids exaggerate. They confuse things. 5 fingerprints aren't a confusion, Callum countered, his knuckles white around his water glass. Marin pushed her plate away, food barely touched. Look, I don't know what she told you, but you're overreacting. There's no mysterious man, no bruises. Then explain this. Callum took out his phone, showing her a photo he'd taken of Ivy's arm while she was watching cartoons. The bruise was clearly visible, unmistakably in the shape of adult fingers. Marin stared at the photo, then looked away, unable to meet his gaze. Like I said, kids fall. 5 fingerprints, Marin. Callum put the phone down with deliberate care, the control in his movements masking the chaos in his mind. That's not from a fall. She stood up abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the linoleum floor. I don't have to listen to this. I work all day, I come home tired, and now you're accusing me of what exactly? I haven't accused you of anything. Yet, Callum remained seated, his voice deadly calm. The calm before the storm. But I will find out what's going on in my house when I'm not here. Count on it. Marin fled the room, muttering about needing a shower. The bathroom door slammed, and moments later, Callum heard the water running. He cleared the table mechanically, scraping plates into the trash, loading the dishwasher, wiping counters. Normal actions for a life that was crumbling around him. His mind raced as he worked. Her reaction told him everything he needed to know. She was hiding someone, and she was desperate to keep it hidden. The receipt, the bruises, Ivy's comments, Marin's lies had all pointed to one conclusion. An affair. A dangerous one that when the kitchen was clean, Callum went to Ivy's room. She sat on her bed in her favorite pajamas, the ones with unicorns, clutching her stuffed rabbit named Hoppy. Her damp hair smelled of the strawberry shampoo she insisted on using, and her cheeks were pink from the warm water. Ready for your story? He asked, sitting beside her on the bed that seemed too small for his large frame. She nodded, handing him the book she'd chosen, the one about the Bear family they'd read 100 times before. He read it with all the character voices she loved, maintaining the routine despite the turmoil in his heart. When he finished, he tucked her in with extra care, pulling the covers up to her chin. "Daddy," she whispered as he was about to turn off the lamp. "Can you leave the nightlight on?" "Of course, princess," he said, switching on the star-shaped light that cast a soft blue glow across the room. "No bad dreams tonight, okay?" "Okay, Daddy." She yawned, clutching Hoppy tight. "I love you bigger than the sky. I love you bigger than the whole universe," he replied, their nightly ritual unchanged despite everything. He kissed her forehead, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair, letting it calm the storm inside him. When he returned to the living room, Marin was on the couch, scrolling through her phone with a glass of wine in hand. Her hair was wet from the shower, and she'd changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt. She didn't look up when he entered. "We need to talk," he said, sitting in the armchair across from her rather than beside her on the couch. "Not now, Cal. I'm tired." She didn't meet his eyes, her thumb continuing to scroll through whatever she was looking at. "Who is he?" Callum asked directly, done with games, done with lies. That Marin's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "What?" "The man who comes here when I'm working." "Who is he?" Callum kept his voice level, but there was no mistaking the steel beneath his words. She laughed, but it sounded forced, brittle. "There's no... You're being paranoid." "Am I?" Callum leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Ivy said you told her she's getting a new daddy. That sounds pretty specific for a 5-year-old to make up." Marin's face flushed with anger, 2 bright spots of color on her cheeks. "You're going to believe the imagination of a child over your own wife? Real nice, California. When my child has bruises and is afraid of a man who comes to our house. Yeah, I'm going to believe her." Callum stood up, too restless to remain seated. "I've got an early shift tomorrow. I'll sleep on the couch tonight." Maren didn't protest. She didn't beg him to stay in their bed. She didn't even look at him as he grabbed a blanket from the hall closet and a pillow from their bedroom. Her lack of reaction was its own kind of confirmation. As he lay on the too small couch, staring at the ceiling fan slowly rotating above him, Callum knew sleep wouldn't come easily. The evidence was mounting, but he needed more. Needed to see for himself exactly what was happening in his house when he wasn't there. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would find out the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. The next day, dragged by at the shop, Callum went through the motions, oil changes, brake checks, a timing belt replacement, but his mind was elsewhere. On Ivy, on Maren, on the unknown man who had dared to hurt his daughter. During his lunch break, he made a call to Mike, his boss. "Need to leave early today, Mike." "Family stuff," he said, keeping it vague. "Everything okay?" Mike asked, concern evident in his gruff voice. In the 15 years Callum had worked for him, he'd rarely asked for time off. "I'll figure it out," Callum replied. "Just need to take care of something." "Take what time you need," Mike assured him. "Thompson can finish that Honda you're working on." When afternoon came, Callum cleaned his tools meticulously, wiped the grease from his hands, and changed into the clean shirt he kept in his locker. He needed to set the stage properly to AT home. He made a show of getting ready for an evening shift. "Going back in tonight," he told Maren, who sat at the kitchen table scrolling through her phone. "Peterson wants his truck done by tomorrow morning." "I thought Thompson was helping with that," she said, not looking up. The fact that she knew Thompson's name, knew the details of his work schedule, might once have pleased him. Now it just reminded him how many lies he'd been telling her over dinner each night, sharing the mundane details of his day while she was planning. "What, exactly? To replace him?" "He is, but there's still plenty to do." Callum shrugged, grabbing his keys. "Don't wait up." She nodded absently, already back to her phone. "Ivy has a play date at Jessica's. I'll pick her up at 7. Good. Ivy would be safe, away from whatever might happen tonight. Instead of heading to the shop, Callum drove around the neighborhood for 20 minutes, giving Maren time to believe he was gone for the night. Then he parked his truck a block over on Elm Street, where he had a clear view of his driveway and front door. The large oak tree provided enough shade to keep him hidden as he settled in to wait, watching as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. For nearly an hour, nothing happened. A neighbor walked his dog past Callum's truck, nodding a greeting without recognizing him in the fading light. Children played in a yard across the street, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Normal life continuing while Callum's hung in the balance. At 8:15 p.m., Maren's car backed out of the driveway. Off to pick up Ivy, he assumed. He watched her drive away, wondering if she'd bring their daughter home to the man who had hurt her. But at 8:30 p.m., before Maren could possibly have reached Jessica's house, a beat-up blue truck pulled into Callum's driveway. His breath caught in his throat as a man stepped out tall, muscular, with tattoos covering both arms. He wore jeans and a dirty white tank top, a cigarette dangling from his lips, smoke curling into the evening air. Without hesitation, the man walked up to Callum's front door, pulled out a key, and let himself in like he owned the place without a key. The bastard had a key to his house that Callum's hands clenched in a fist so tight his nails bit into his palms. So that's him. The man who had been in his home, in his life, without his knowledge. The man who had put his hands on Ivy. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. This wasn't about his wounded pride or broken marriage. This was about Ivy's safety, about a man who had hurt his child being given free access to their home. The porch light cast long shadows as the door closed behind the intruder. Callum sat motionless in his truck, rage and betrayal washing over him in equal measure. Inside that house, his house, bought with his sweat and sacrifice, was the man who had put bruises on his daughter's arm. The man his wife had chosen over her own family. For a moment, Callum considered storming in right then, confronting this stranger in his home, demanding answers, delivering the justice his fists ached to dispense. But the rational part of his brain, the part that fixed complex engines with patience and precision, held him back. Going in hot would only make things worse. He needed to be smart. Needed to think of Ivy first. Callum checked his watch. 8:35 p.m. Marin would be back with Ivy soon. He couldn't let his daughter walk into this situation. Couldn't let her see the man who had hurt her. Couldn't risk putting her in danger again. He pulled out his phone and called Marin's cell. It rang 4 times before she answered, the sound of children's voices in the background. "Cal, what's up?" she asked, sounding genuinely surprised to hear from him. "Hey, change of plans," he said, keeping his voice casual despite the rage boiling inside him. "Can you take Ivy to my mom's for the night? I might finish earlier than I thought, and I'd like to take you out. Just the 2 of us." There was a pause on the other end. "Take me out? Tonight?" "Yeah," he said, watching the windows of his house for any sign of movement. "It's been a while since we had time alone." Another pause. He could almost hear the wheels turning in her head, calculating what this meant for her plans. "I guess I could. Your mom won't mind. You know she loves having Ivy over," Callum said, tension making his voice tight despite his efforts. "Just drop her off and come home. I'll be there by 9:30. "Okay," Marin agreed too quickly. "See you soon." Callum hung up, his mind racing. Ivy would be safe at his mother's. And now he had time to figure out exactly what was going on in his house, who this man was, and what he was going to do about it. That he sat in his truck, watching his home, planning his next move. Now that Ivy was taken care of, he could focus on the betrayal unfolding before him. On the man who had waltzed into his life, hurt his child, and threatened everything he'd worked for. The porch light cast long shadows as the door closed behind Wes. Callum sat motionless in his truck, rage and betrayal washing over him in equal measure. Inside that house's house was the man who had put bruises on his daughter's arm. The man his wife's had chosen over her own family. Callum knew what he had to do now. This ended here. This ended today. Callum's first instinct was to storm into the house, fists clenched and ready. The rage pulsing through his veins demanded action, demanded that he confront the man who'd hurt his daughter. But the rational part of his brain, the part that had kept him alive through 15 years of working with dangerous machinery, held him back. Storming and half-cocked would accomplish nothing. He needed evidence, proof that couldn't be denied or explained away, something concrete that would stand up in court if it came to that. Callum reached into his glove compartment and pulled out his phone. He opened the camera app, switched it to video mode, and zoomed in on his front door. The porch light illuminated the entrance clearly enough to capture what he needed. 8:42 p.m., he murmured, recording the timestamp. "Unknown male enter my house at 3487 Maple Street using a key he shouldn't have." He panned to capture the blue truck in his driveway, making sure to get a clear shot of the license plate. TXL 429. Evidence. Then he settled back to wait, camera ready. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. The house remained quiet, just a single lamp visible through the living room window. Callum checked his watch repeatedly, wondering where Marin was, hoping she'd taken Ivy to his mother's as instructed. His phone buzzed with a text. "Marin, dropped Ivy off. Be home in 15. Good. At least Ivy was safe. At 9:05 p.m., movement caught his eye. The living room curtain shifted, and Callum could see Wes moving around inside. He was carrying what looked like 2 bottles. Beer, probably. Making himself right at home. "That's right, you bastard," Callum muttered, recording every movement. "Drink up. Enjoy it while you can." At 9:18 p.m., Marin's car pulled into the driveway. Callum adjusted his position to get a better angle, capturing her as she stepped out. She'd changed clothes since he'd seen her last now, wearing a tight black dress he didn't recognize, her hair down around her shoulders. She'd put on makeup too, dark lipstick visible even in the dim light. She wasn't dressed for a casual night at home. She was dressed for a date. That Callum's grip tightened on his phone as he recorded Marin walking up to the front door. She paused before entering, checking her reflection in the window, smoothing her hair. Then she went inside. Through the window, Callum could see their reunion. Wes handed Marin a bottle of beer. She laughed at something he said, tossing her hair back in a gesture Callum had once found endearing. Now it made his stomach turn. They settled on the couch, his couch, sitting close, their bodies touching. Wes draped his arm around Marin's shoulders, pulling her against him. She didn't resist. If anything, she leaned into his touch. "Jesus Christ," Callum whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper with every second of footage. For the next hour, he recorded them drinking, laughing, touching. Wes would whisper something in Marin's ear, and she'd giggle like a teenager. At one point, he grabbed her roughly, pulling her onto his lap. She wrapped her arms around his neck, kissing him deeply to eye in the truck. Callum's jaw clenched so tight it ached. But he kept recording. Every touch, every kiss, every moment of betrayal. At 10:45 p.m., they moved from the couch. Wes grabbed another beer from the kitchen while Marin disappeared down the hallway toward the bedroom. Their bedroom. Callum's and Marin's. A minute later, the light in the bedroom window came on. Wes followed the same path Marin had taken, beer in hand, a swagger in his step. Callum stopped recording then. He didn't need to see more. Didn't want to see more. He had all the evidence he needed. For a long moment, he sat motionless in his truck, staring at the bedroom window. The urge to go in there now, to confront them, was almost overwhelming. But no, that wasn't the smart play. If he went in now, emotions high, who knew what might happen? Instead, he started his truck and drove to a motel on the edge of town. He paid cash for a room, ignored the clerk's curious look at his lack of luggage, and locked himself inside the sparse space. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he reviewed the footage he'd captured. Wes entering with a key, Marin arriving. The two of them drinking, laughing, kissing in his living room. All of it damning. All of it proof of the life she'd been living behind his back. Callum sent the video files to his email as backup, then set an alarm for 6 a.m. He didn't expect to sleep, but exhaustion claimed him eventually, pulling him into a fitful rest filled with images of Wes's hands on his daughter's arm, on his wife's body. Tomorrow, he decided as consciousness slipped away. Tomorrow, this ended. Callum woke before his alarm, the motel room still dark around him. For a disorienting moment, he couldn't remember where he was or why. Then it all came flooding back, the bruises on Ivy's arm, the man in his house, Marin's betrayal. He showered quickly in the lukewarm water, scrubbing away the night's sweat and grime. The face that stared back at him from the bathroom mirror looked older than it had just days ago. Lines of anger and determination etched around his eyes. By 7:30 a.m., he was parked outside his mother's house. The modest one-story home where he'd grown up looked exactly as it always had: flower boxes under the windows, wind chimes on the porch, a welcome mat that had seen better days. His mother answered the door in her bathrobe, coffee mug in hand. "Callum? I didn't expect you so early." "Morning, Mom." He kissed her cheek. "Ivy's still asleep?" "Out like a light." She studied his face, concern creasing her brow. "You look terrible. What's going on?" "Just some things I need to take care of," he said, not meeting her eyes. "Can Ivy stay with you a little longer? Just till this afternoon?" His mother's gaze sharpened. The woman who'd raised him alone after his father walked out wasn't easily fooled. "Callum James Mercer. Where are you planning?" "Nothing illegal," he assured her, which wasn't exactly an answer. "I just need to have a conversation with Marin without Ivy around." She sighed, recognizing the stubborn set of his jaw, the same expression she'd seen countless times as he grew up. "Fine, but call me afterward, you hear? Let me know everything's okay." "I will. Promise." He squeezed her shoulder. "Tell Ivy I'll pick her up after lunch." "And Mom?" "Thanks." As he drove toward home, Callum rehearsed what he would say, how he would confront Marin with the evidence, what he would do when not if Wes was still there to... He pulled into his driveway at 8:15 a.m. The blue truck was still parked where it had been the night before. Good. He wanted to face them both. The house was quiet as he unlocked the front door. The living room showed evidence of last night's activities: empty beer bottles on the coffee table, Marin's shoes kicked off by the couch, a man's jacket thrown over the armchair. Callum moved silently through the house, his work boots barely making a sound on the carpet. The kitchen was empty, but he could hear movement down the hall. Running water. Someone was in the shower. He sat at the kitchen table and waited, his phone on the table in front of him, the damning video queued up and ready to play. 5 minutes later, Marin walked into the kitchen, humming softly. She wore an oversized t-shirt that Callum had never seen before, her hair wet from the shower. She froze when she saw him, her eyes widening in shock. Cal! Her hand flew to her throat. You're home early. Callum said nothing, just watched her, noting the way her gaze darted to the hallway, then back to him. Calculating. Always calculating. I thought you'd be at work already, she continued, trying to sound casual and failing miserably. Do you want some coffee? I was just about to make. Sit down, Marin, Callum interrupted, his voice cold and controlled. Something in his tone made her comply immediately. She sank into the chair across from him, hands twisting nervously in her lap. Cal, what's going on? Where's Ivy? Safe. He stared at her, searching for any sign of the woman he'd married. The woman he'd trusted with his life, with his child. Far away from here. Marin swallowed hard. You're scaring me. Good. Callum set his phone on the table and pressed play. Want to explain this to me? The video started playing, Wes using a key to enter their home. Marin's arrival. Their embrace in the living room. All color drained from Marin's face as she watched. Cal, I can explain. Can you? He stopped the video, his finger hovering over the screen. Can you explain why a stranger has a key to my house? Why he's drinking my beer? Why he's kissing my wife? It's not what it looks like, she stammered, the lies so blatant it was almost laughable. It's exactly what it looks like, Callum countered. You're cheating on me. In our home, where our daughter lives. Marin's eyes filled with tears. Cal, I was lonely. You're always working. Shut up. His voice cut through her excuses like a blade. This isn't just about you screwing around. This is about Ivy. He leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Did you know your boyfriend hurt our daughter? Marin's face flickered with guilt a brief flash, there and gone, but Callum caught it. She knew. She'd known and done nothing. It wasn't that bad. She started. Callum's fist slammed into the wall beside her head, the drywall cracking under the impact. Marin flinched, shrinking back in her chair. Not that bad? He snarled, his control slipping for the first time. He put bruises on her arm, Marin. He scared her so badly she's afraid to sleep without a nightlight. And you let him back into our house? Back near our daughter? Marin shook her head, tears streaming down her face. He didn't mean to hurt her. It was an accident. Bullshit. Callum straightened up, disgust written across his features. You chose him over your own child's safety. What kind of mother does that? You don't understand, Marin pleaded, reaching for his hand. Callum pulled away as if her touch might burn him. I understand perfectly. You. The sound of a door opening down the hall cut him off. Heavy footsteps approached the kitchen, accompanied by a low, masculine grumble. Babe, where'd you put my phone? I need to. Wes stopped short as he entered the kitchen, his eyes landing on Callum. For a tense moment, no one moved. Wes stood in the doorway, wearing nothing but jeans, his chest bare, hair still damp from the shower. A tattoo of a snake wrapped around his right bicep, its fangs bared in a permanent snarl. Then he grinned, a slow, mocking smile that didn't reach his eyes. Well, hell, guess she told you. Callum didn't hesitate. He launched himself across the kitchen, his fist connecting with Wes's jaw in a blow that sent the larger man crashing into the kitchen table. Dishes clattered to the floor, shattering on impact. Cal, stop! Marin screamed, jumping back from the violence. Wes recovered quickly, wiping blood from his split lip. You son of a bitch, he growled, lunging at Callum. They collided in the middle of the kitchen, grappling for control. Wes had height and weight on his side, but Callum had 15 years of physical labor behind him, muscles hardened from lifting engines and wrestling with stubborn machinery. Wes landed a punch to Callum's ribs that knocked the wind from him. Pain flared along his side, but Callum pushed through it, grabbing Wes by the shoulders and slamming him against the refrigerator. Magnets and photos cascaded to the floor, Ivy's drawings, a school schedule, a family photo from happier times. You think it's funny? Callum growled, punctuating each word with a shake that rattled Wes's head against the refrigerator door. Putting your hands on my kid? Get off me, man. Wes tried to push him away, but Callum's grip was iron. Answer me, Callum demanded, slamming him again. You think it's okay to hurt a 5-year-old girl? To grab her hard enough to leave bruises? The brat spilled juice all over my new boots. Wes spat, struggling against Callum's hold. She needed to learn some respect. Something snapped inside Callum at those words. The last thread of restraint, of civilization, gave way to pure, protective rage. His fist connected with Wes's face once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Blood spurted from Wes's nose, splattering across the white refrigerator door. Respect. Callum hissed, his voice deadly quiet. I'll teach you about respect. He dragged Wes away from the refrigerator, throwing him into the center of the kitchen. Wes stumbled, off balance and dazed from the blows. Callum didn't give him time to recover. He followed with a punch to the solar plexus that doubled Wes over, gasping for air. Cal, please. Marin begged from the doorway, her face streaked with tears. You're going to kill him. Shut up, Callum snapped, not taking his eyes off Wes. You lost the right to ask anything of me the moment you let this piece of garbage near our daughter. Wes tried to straighten up, to fight back, but Callum was relentless. Another punch sent Wes staggering backward until his legs hit a chair and he collapsed onto it, blood streaming from his broken nose. That's enough. Wes wheezed, holding up his hands in surrender. I get it, man. I'll stay away from your kid. You'll stay away from my family, Callum corrected him, standing over the bloodied man. My house. My town, if you know what's good for you. Wes glared up at him through swelling eyes. You think this changes anything? She doesn't want you anymore, man. She's been looking for a way out for months. Callum glanced at Marin, who shrank back under his gaze. Is that true? She shook her head frantically. No, Cal, he's lying. I never. Save it. Callum cut her off. I don't care what you want anymore. This is about Ivy now. He turned back to Wes, who was using the hem of his jeans to wipe blood from his face. Get up. Get your stuff. Get out of my house. My truck keys are in the bedroom, Wes muttered, struggling to stand. Marin will get them for you, Callum said, not taking his eyes off the man. Won't you, Marin? She nodded quickly, disappearing down the hallway. Callum and Wes stared at each other in tense silence until she returned, holding a set of keys and a phone. Here, she said, handing them to Wes with trembling fingers. Wes snatched them from her hand. This is bullshit, he muttered, wincing as he touched his broken nose. You're crazy, man. Both of you. Get out, Callum repeated, stepping aside to clear a path to the door. Wes limped toward the exit, favoring his left side where Callum's blows had connected with his ribs. At the door, he paused, looking back at Marin. You coming? Her eyes darted between Wes and Callum, indecision written across her face. Make your choice, Marin, Callum said quietly. But understand this, if you walk out that door with him, you're giving up any claim to Ivy. I will fight you in court until there's nothing left of either of us, and I will win. Tears spilled down Marin's cheeks. Cal, please. Choose, he repeated, unmoved by her tears. After a long, tense moment, Marin shook her head. I can't go with you, Wes. Anger flashed across Wes's battered face. After everything I did for you, you're choosing him. I'm choosing my daughter, Marin whispered, not looking at either man. Wes spat on the floor, a glob of bloody saliva landing on the linoleum. Whatever. You're not worth this shit anyway. He stalked out, slamming the door behind him. Through the kitchen window, Callum watched Wes climb into his truck, his movements stiff and pained. The engine roared to life, and the blue truck peeled out of the driveway, tires squealing on the pavement. When he turned back to Marin, his eyes were cold. Don't think this means we're okay. She nodded, wiping away tears. I know. I couldn't leave Ivy. You already did, Callum said, his voice flat. The moment you let that man near her, you left her. Marin sank into a chair, her shoulders slumped in defeat. What happens now? Callum looked around the kitchen at the broken dishes, the blood on his refrigerator, the shattered remains of the life they'd built together. Now, he said, his eyes narrowing, I'm not done with you yet. Marin trembled at his words, suddenly realizing this was just the beginning. Cal, please, she begged, reaching for him. We can work this out. For Ivy's sake. Don't, he cut her off, stepping away from her touch. Don't you dare use her name. Not after what you did. What are you going to do? She whispered, fear creeping in her voice that Callum's expression was carved from stone. Whatever it takes to protect my daughter. Starting now. We turned back to Marin. His eyes were cold. Don't think this means we're okay. She nodded, wiping away tears. I know. I couldn't leave Ivy. You already did, Callum said, his voice flat. The moment you let that man near her, you left her. Marin sank into a chair, her shoulders slumped in defeat. What happens now? Callum looked around the kitchen at the broken dishes, the blood on his refrigerator, the shattered remains of the life they'd built together. Now, he said, his voice hard with determination, I'm not done with you yet. Marin's face crumpled as the full weight of his words crashed down on her. She made the biggest mistake of her life, and from the look in Callum's eyes, there would be no forgiveness. No second chances, just consequences. The kitchen still smelled of blood and rage. Broken glass glittered on the linoleum floor like scattered diamonds. Wes lay slumped against the wall, groaning in pain, his face a mess of blood and swelling bruises. Marin stood frozen by the refrigerator, her makeup streaked by tears, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Callum stepped over the broken chair, moving deliberately to the counter where his phone lay. The adrenaline that had fueled his attack on Wes was subsiding, replaced by a cold, calculated anger that focused his mind with crystal clarity. What are you doing? Marin asked, her voice rising as she watched him pick up the phone. Callum looked up, his expression hard. Well, I should have done the moment Ivy showed me those bruises. Cal, no. Marin moved toward him, panic flashing in her eyes. You can't. Watch me. He held her gaze as he began to dial that a smirk crossed Marin's face, an unexpected reaction that caught Callum off guard. What are you going to say? That you beat up my boyfriend? The question hung in the air between them, a pathetic attempt at leverage. Callum felt a cold smile form on his lips. No. His finger hovered over the speakerphone button. I'm reporting child abuse. The smirk vanished from Marin's face, replaced by something Callum had never seen there before, pure, unadulterated fear. Her face went pale, the blood draining away so rapidly he thought she might faint. Cal, you can't. They'll take Ivy from you. Callum's finger pressed down, activating the speaker. That's the idea. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, Deputy Martinez speaking. Martinez, it's Callum Mercer. I need to speak with Sheriff Owens. It's urgent. A pause. He's here, Callum. One moment. Marin lunged across the kitchen, her hands reaching for the phone. Hang up, please. Callum stepped back, keeping the device out of her reach. Too late, Marin. You made your choice. Now live with it. Callum. Sheriff Owens' gruff voice came through the speaker. What's going on, son? Sheriff, I need you to come to my house. 3487 Maple Street. Callum kept his eyes fixed on Marin, who had collapsed back against the counter, her head in her hands. I need to report a child abuse case. Your daughter? The sheriff's voice sharpened with concern. Yes, sir. And I have evidence. Photos, videos, everything you'll need. Stay where you are. I'm on my way. The line went dead. Callum placed the phone on the counter, the silence in the kitchen broken only by Wes's pained breathing. Marin stared at Callum, her eyes red-rimmed and desperate. You've ruined everything, she whispered. No, Marin. Callum shook his head slowly. You did that all on your own. From the floor, Wes let out a bitter laugh that ended in a cough. You think you've won? This ain't over, man. Callum turned his cold gaze to the battered man. For you it is. With your record, you'll be lucky to see daylight in 5 years. Bullshit, Wes spat, wincing as he tried to straighten up. It's my word against yours. No. Callum moved to the kitchen table where the folders of evidence lay neatly organized. It's your word against Ivy's testimony, the photos of her bruises, and the video of you admitting you grabbed her. Wes's eyes widened. You're bluffing. There's no video. Want to bet your freedom on that? Callum asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Marin pushed away from the counter, panic driving her movements. I need to get out of here. I can't be here when they come. You're not going anywhere. Callum moved to block the doorway. You're going to face what you did. Both of you. I hate you. She spat, the words venomous. Better that than having you love me, apparently. Callum's reply was cold, devoid of emotion. For 10 tense minutes, they remained in a silent standoff, Callum by the doorway, Marin at the counter, Wes slumped against the wall, occasionally spitting blood onto the floor. The distant wail of sirens broke the silence, growing louder until red and blue lights flashed through the kitchen windows. Marin's shoulders slumped in defeat. "This can't be happening." "It is," Callum replied. "Time's up." Sheriff Owens arrived with 2 deputies, their patrol cars parked at angles in Callum's driveway. The sheriff himself was a tall man with silver hair and a weathered face that had seen 40 years of service. He'd known Callum since he was a boy, had watched him grow from a troubled teen into a solid man. "Callum." Owens nodded grimly as he entered the kitchen, his experienced eyes taking in the broken glass, the blood-stained floor, the clear evidence of a struggle. "Quite a mess you've got here." "Not as bad as it looks," Callum replied, stepping aside to let the sheriff into. Owens's eyes landed on Wes, who was still groaning on the floor, blood crusted around his nose and mouth. "I see you two had a disagreement." "You could say that." Callum moved to the counter where he'd placed a folder evidence compiled with methodical precision over the past 2 days. "Sheriff, I need to report a crime. I can see there's been some violence here," Owens noted, gesturing for one of the deputies to check on Wes. "Want to tell me what happened?" Callum opened the folder, sliding a printed photo across the counter to Owens. It showed Ivy's small arm, the bruises clearly visible. "My daughter Ivy told me 2 days ago that a man who comes to our house when I'm at work grabbed her because she spilled juice. She also told me that Marin had said she was getting a new daddy." Owens studied the photo, his expression hardening. "Go on." "I didn't confront Marin immediately. I wanted proof." Callum pulled out his phone, queuing up the video he'd taken. "Last night, I told Marin I had to work late. Instead, I watched the house." He pressed play, showing Owens the footage of Wes entering the house with a key, followed by Marin arriving later. "That's Weston Grady," Owens said, recognizing the man immediately. "He's on parole." "I know." Callum nodded. "I did some research. Multiple arrests for assault, violation of a restraining order. And now he's put his hands on my daughter." Marin stood by the refrigerator, arms wrapped around herself. "This is ridiculous. You can't just—" "Be quiet, Mrs. Mercer," Owens commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. Marin fell silent, her eyes wild with fear. Callum continued, his voice steady despite the emotion churning beneath. "I confronted Marin this morning with the evidence. While we were talking, Grady came out of our bedroom. He hesitated, glancing at his bruised knuckles. There was an altercation. I can see that," Owens commented dryly. "Did Grady admit to hurting Ivy?" "Yes." Callum pulled out another document, a printout of Wes's criminal record. "Said she needed to learn some respect because she spilled juice on his boots." Owens' face darkened as he read the rap sheet. "And you, Mrs. Mercer? What do you have to say about all this?" Marin's mascara had left black trails down her cheeks, her hands twisted together in her lap. "It wasn't like that. Wes has a temper, but he didn't mean to hurt Ivy. It was just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Callum's voice was ice. "You knew he hurt her, and you let him back into our house. Back near our daughter. I didn't know how bad it was." Marin protested, her voice rising. "Ivy never told me he grabbed her that hard. So you admit you knew he put his hands on her?" Owens asked, his pen poised over his notepad. Marin's eyes darted between the sheriff and Callum, realizing too late the trap she'd walked into. That's not what I meant. Where is Ivy now?" Owens asked, turning back to Callum. "Safe with my mother. I took her there last night before confronting Marin." The sheriff nodded, seemingly satisfied with Callum's protective instincts. "We'll need to talk to her, get a statement. But we can do that with a child psychologist present. No need to traumatize her further." "Thank you," Callum said, relief evident in his voice. Owens turned back to Wes, who was now sitting upright, a deputy crouched beside him. "You able to stand, Grady?" "Go to hell," Wes muttered, spitting blood onto Callum's kitchen floor. "I'll take that as a yes." Owens nodded to the deputy, who helped Wes to his feet. "Weston Grady, You're under arrest for assault on a minor and trespassing. What? Wes jerked in the deputy's grasp. You can't. I can and I am. Owens recited the Miranda rights while the deputy handcuffed Wes, who continued to protest through his swollen lips. Then Owens turned to Marin, his expression grim. Marin Mercer, you're under arrest for child endangerment. What? Marin's voice rose to a shriek. You can't. I can and I am. Owens signaled to the remaining deputy. You knowingly allowed a violent offender access to your child after he had physically harmed her. That's textbook child endangerment in the state of Texas. The deputy stepped forward, handcuffs ready. Please stand up and place your hands behind your back, ma'am. Callum. Marin turned to him, pleading. Don't do this. Callum watched impassively as the deputy recited Miranda rights and secured the handcuffs around Marin's wrists. Her screams echoed through the house as they led her outside to the waiting patrol car. You're making a mistake. I'm her mother. Callum, don't do this. Callum didn't say a damn word as they took them both away. He stood in the doorway, watching as they helped Marin into the back of one cruiser and Wes, still groaning in pain, into another. Once, the sight might have broken his heart. Now, he felt nothing but a cold certainty that justice was being served. Sheriff Owens remained behind, gathering the evidence Callum had provided. I want you to come down to the station later today, give a formal statement. I'll be there, Callum agreed. After I pick up Ivy from my mother's. Good. Owens clasped his shoulder. And, Callum, you did the right thing. That little girl is lucky to have you. As the patrol cars pulled away, their sirens wailing in the morning air, Callum stood on his front porch watching until they disappeared around the corner. Only then did he allow himself to take a deep breath, the weight of the morning's events settling on his shoulders. IT was over. And yet it was just beginning. The Jefferson County Courthouse stood imposingly at the center of town, its red brick facade and white columns a testament to small-town justice. Callum straightened his tie, a rare accessory he usually reserved for weddings and funerals, as he climbed the worn stone steps beside his lawyer, Michael Burke. Remember, Burke murmured, his briefcase swinging at his side, let me do most of the talking. No matter what Marin or her lawyer says, keep your cool. I know. Callum nodded, his eyes fixed on the heavy wooden doors ahead. Just give me full custody of Ivy. With the evidence we have, I'm confident we will. But be prepared, these hearings can get ugly. Inside, the courtroom was already half full when they entered, mostly strangers there for other cases. But Callum spotted his mother in the front row, her face lined with worry and determination in equal measure. She'd been his rock through all of this, taking Ivy whenever he had to work or meet with lawyers, shielding the little girl from the worst of the upheaval. Marin sat at the opposite table with her court-appointed attorney, a young woman who looked overwhelmed by the case. After 6 weeks in county jail awaiting her hearing, Marin had lost weight, her prison jumpsuit hanging loosely on her frame, dark circles under her eyes. She attempted a smile when she saw Callum, but he looked right through her as he took his seat. All rise for the Honorable Judge Eleanor Hayes, the bailiff announced, and the rustling of movement filled the courtroom. Judge Hayes was a formidable woman in her 60s, her silver hair cut in a no-nonsense bob, her eyes sharp behind rimless glasses. She took her seat, surveyed the courtroom, and nodded. Be seated. The proceedings began with formal introductions. Burke presented their petition for sole custody, outlining the circumstances that had led to this day. Your Honor, he said, his voice confident, the evidence will show that Marin Mercer knowingly endangered her 5-year-old daughter by allowing a violent offender access to their home after he had physically abused the child. Marin's attorney rose. Your Honor, Ms. Mercer acknowledges her lapse in judgment, but maintains that she never intended to put her daughter at risk. She loves Ivy deeply and is committed to rebuilding their relationship in a safe, supervised environment. Judge Hayes nodded, her expression neutral. I'll hear the evidence. What followed was a methodical dismantling of Marin's fitness as a mother. Burke presented the police report, the photos of Ivy's bruises, and a recording Callum had made of Ivy describing what happened. Daddy, the man who comes over grabbed my arm really hard when I spilled juice. Ivy's small voice filled the courtroom from the recorder. It hurted. Marin broke down at the sound, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Her attorney placed a comforting hand on her arm, but the damage was done. The recording continued, with Ivy explaining how Marin had told her she might get a new daddy soon. Burke followed with testimony from Sheriff Owens about Wes's criminal record and the circumstances of the arrests. He called the Child Protective Services worker who had interviewed Ivy, who confirmed the child account and expressed concern about Marin's significant lack of protective capacity. Finally, he called Callum to the stand. After being sworn in, Callum sat straight back in the witness chair, his hands resting on his thighs. He answered Burke's questions calmly, describing the day Ivy showed him the bruises, the evidence he'd gathered, and the confrontation that followed. And at any point, Burke asked, did Marin express concern about Weston Grady's treatment of her daughter? No, Callum replied firmly. When I confronted her with the bruises, she tried to claim Ivy had fallen. When I presented the video evidence of Grady entering our home, she begged me not to call the police. Her concern was for him, not for Ivy. Marin's attorney cross-examined him, trying to paint him as controlling and vindictive. Isn't it true, Mr. Mercer, that you assaulted Mr. Grady before calling the police? Yes, Callum admitted without hesitation. When he appeared in my kitchen and made comments about hurting my daughter, I acted to protect her by beating him so severely he required medical attention. Callum met the attorney's gaze steadily. By ensuring he understood he would never touch my daughter again, the attorney tried another angle. And isn't it true that you've been deliberately keeping Ivy from her mother during this legal process? I've followed the court's temporary custody orders to the letter, Callum replied calmly. And yes, I've refused to allow unauthorized visits with a woman who chose her boyfriend over our daughter's safety. When Marin took the stand, her testimony was a tearful blend of excuses and promises. She claimed she hadn't known the extent of Wes's violence, that she'd been manipulated by him, that she'd made a terrible mistake she would never repeat. I love my daughter more than anything, she pleaded, looking directly at Callum rather than the judge. I made one awful mistake. Please don't take her away from me forever. Burke's cross-examination was surgical in its precision. Ms. Mercer, did you or did you not give Weston Grady a key to the home where your 5-year-old daughter lived? Yes, but... And did you or did you not continue to allow him into that home after you knew he had grabbed your daughter hard enough to leave bruises? I didn't think. It's a yes or no question, Ms. Mercer. Marin's shoulders slumped. Yes. And when Mr. Mercer confronted you with evidence of Mr. Grady's abuse, did you immediately express concern for your daughter's safety? Not exactly, but again, Ms. Mercer, yes or no? A whispered no. No further questions, Your Honor. After closing arguments, Judge Hayes took only 15 minutes to render her decision. She returned to the bench, her expression grave as she addressed the courtroom. In matters of child custody, this court is guided by one principle above all others, the best interest of the child. She looked directly at Marin. Ms. Mercer, while I believe you love your daughter, love alone is not enough. Parents must protect their children from harm, not invited into their homes. Marin began to cry softly, seeming to sense what was coming. The evidence presented today shows a pattern of choices that prioritize your relationship with a violent offender over your daughter's safety and well-being. Judge Hayes shuffled the papers before her. Therefore, I am granting Mr. Mercer's petition for sole legal and physical custody of Ivy Mercer. Ms. Mercer's parental rights are hereby terminated. A gasp escaped Marin's lips, followed by a wail of distress. No, you can't do this. Order, Judge Hayes commanded, banging her gavel. When silence returned, she continued, Ms. Mercer, this court does not make such decisions lightly. However, your actions demonstrated a profound failure to protect your child from known harm. The law is clear in such cases. She turned to Callum. Mr. Mercer, the court recognizes your commitment to your daughter's safety and well-being. You are granted full custody with all legal rights and responsibilities that entails. Thank you, Your Honor, Callum said, relief washing over him As the judge rose and left the courtroom, Marin collapsed against her attorney, sobbing openly now. Please, there has to be something we can do. An appeal. Her attorney shook her head, already gathering her papers. I'm sorry, Ms. Mercer. With the evidence presented, an appeal would likely fail. Callum felt no satisfaction in Marin's pain, only a weary resolution that he'd done what was necessary to protect his daughter. He stood to embrace his mother, who had tears in her eyes. It's over, Mom, he said quietly. She's safe. You did good, son, she whispered, patting his cheek as she had when he was at BOY. As they prepared to leave, Marin broke away from her attorney, rushing toward them. Callum, please. You can't do this. She needs her mother. The bailiff moved to intercept her, but Callum held up a hand. It's okay. He faced Marin directly for the first time since the hearing began. You should have thought of that before you let him hurt her. I'll change, Marin promised desperately. I'll do whatever it takes. Please don't keep her from me. I'm not keeping her from you, Callum replied, his voice steady. The court did that, and you did it to yourself. He turned away. Let's go, Mom. As they walked out of the courthouse into the bright Texas sunshine, Callum felt a weight lift from his shoulders. There would be challenges ahead explaining to Ivy why her mother couldn't see her anymore, building a new life for just the two of them, navigating the complicated waters of single fatherhood. But Ivy was safe, and that made everything else manageable. Months later, Callum and Ivy were settled in their new home. Far from their old neighborhood, far from the memories that haunted them, they had started fresh. A small house with a yard where Ivy could play, a new school where no one knew their story, a chance to rebuild without the shadows of the past. Ivy was happy, free of fear, and surrounded by love. The nightmares that had plagued her in the weeks following the arrests had faded. She rarely asked about Marin anymore, and when she did, Callum answered honestly, but simply. Mommy made bad choices, and now she can't be with us anymore. Marin had spent 6 months in jail for child endangerment. Upon release, she'd found herself in a world that had moved on without her. The diner had fired her. No one else in town would hire her once they learned why she'd been arrested. Former friends crossed the street to avoid her. Neighbors who had once smiled and waved now closed their doors when they saw her coming. Homeless, broke, and completely alone, she tried reaching out to Callum, begging for another chance, for just a glimpse of Ivy. Her calls went straight to voicemail. Her letters were returned unopened. Her attempts to see them at the grocery store or park were met with Callum's back as he guided Ivy away. Every door had slammed in her face, and the one that mattered most, the door to her daughter's life, remained firmly shut. Wes? He had received 5 years for child assault and breaking parole. Behind bars, unable to hurt Ivy or anyone else's child, he had already faded from their lives like a bad dream upon waking. Tonight, as the Texas sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Callum sat on the porch swing, watching Ivy play in the yard. Her laughter carried on the evening breeze, a sound that never failed to heal something broken inside him. Daddy, look, she called, pointing to a butterfly that had landed on a rose bush he'd planted when they first moved in. It's so pretty. Sure as Princess, he called back, smiling as she crept closer to the insect, her movements exaggeratedly slow and careful. Ivy giggled as the butterfly took flight, then ran back to the porch, climbing onto the swing beside him. The old wooden frame creaked gently as they set in motion, back and forth in a soothing rhythm. Daddy. Ivy's voice was thoughtful as she leaned against his arm. Yes, Princess. Remember when you promised you wouldn't leave me? At the park that day. Callum's heart squeezed at the memory of the day that had changed everything, set them on this path. I remember. Ivy giggled, hugging his arm. You were right, Daddy. You never left me. Callum bent down, pressing a kiss to her forehead, breathing in the scent of sunshine and strawberry shampoo. Never will, sweetheart. As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in deepening shades of purple and gold, Callum held his daughter close, grateful for the second chance they'd been given. The cost of betrayal had been high, a marriage destroyed, a family fractured, lives forever altered. But sitting here with Ivy, safe and happy beside him, Callum knew it had been worth every painful moment. Some prices had to be paid to protect what mattered most. And nothing in this world mattered more than the little girl beside him, watching the sunset with trust in her eyes and love in her heart.